The Wandering Jew by Rudyard Kipling. Footnote copyright 1891 by Macmillan Co. If you go once round the world in an easterly direction, you gain one day, said the men of science to John Hay. In after years John Hay went east, west, north, and south, transacted business, made love, and begat a family, as have done many men, and the scientific information above recorded lay, neglected in the deeps of his mind, with 1,000 other matters of equal importance. When a rich relative died, he found himself wealthy beyond any reasonable expectation that he had entertained in his previous career, which had been a checkered, an evil one indeed, long before the legacy came to him. There existed in the brain of John Hay a little cloud, a momentary obscuration of thought that came and went almost before he could realize that there was any solution of continuity. So do the bats flit round the eaves of a house, to show that the darkness is falling. He entered upon great possessions in money, land, and houses. But behind his delight stood a ghost that cried out that his enjoyment of these things should not be of long duration. It was the ghost of the rich relative who had been permitted to return to earth to torture his nephew into the grave. Wherefore, under the spur of this constant reminder, John Hay, always preserving the air of heavy business-like stolidity that hid the shadow on his mind, turned investments, houses, and lands into sovereigns, rich round red English sovereigns, each one worth 20 shillings. Lands may become valueless, and houses fly heavenward on the wings of red flame. But till the day of judgment, a sovereign will always be a sovereign, that is to say, a king of pleasures. Possessed of his sovereigns, John Hay would fain have spent them one by one on such coarse amusements as his soul loved, but he was haunted by the instant fear of death, for the ghost of his relative stood in the hall of his house close to the hat-rack, shouting up the stairway that life was short, that there was no hope of increase of days, and that the undertakers were already roughing out his nephew's coffin. John Hay was generally alone in the house, and even when he had company, his friends could not hear the clamorous uncle. The shadow inside his brain grew larger and blacker. His fear of death was driving John Hay mad. Then from the deeps of his mind, where he had stowed away all his discarded information, rose to light the scientific fact of the easterly journey. On the next occasion that his uncle shouted up the stairway, urging him to make haste and live, a shriller voice cried, "Who goes round the world once easterly gains one day." His growing diffidence and distrust of mankind made John Hay unwilling to give this precious message of hope to his friends. They might take it up and analyze it. He was sure it was true, but it would pain him acutely were rough hands to examine it too closely. To him alone of all the toiling generations of mankind had the secret of immortality been vouchsafed. It would be impious against all the designs of the Creator to set mankind hurrying eastward. Besides this would crowd the steamers inconveniently, and John Hay wished of all things to be alone. If he could get round the world in 2 months, some one of whom he had read, he could not remember the name, had covered the passage in 80 days, would gain a clear day, and by steadily continuing to do it for 30 years would gain 180 days, or nearly the half of a year. It would not be much, but in course of time, as civilization advanced and the Euphrates Valley Railway was opened, he could improve the pace. Armed with many sovereigns, John Hay, in the 35th year of his age, set forth on his travels, 2 voices bearing him company from Dover as he sailed to Calais. Fortune favored him. The Euphrates Valley Railway was newly opened, and he was the first man who took ticket direct from Calais to Calcutta. 13 days in the train. 13 days in the train are not good for the nerves, but he covered the world and returned to Calais from America in 12 days over the 2 months, and started afresh with 24 hours of precious time to his credit. 3 years passed, and John Hay religiously went round this earth, seeking for more time wherein to enjoy the remainder of his sovereigns. He became known on many lines as the man who wanted to go on. When people asked him what he was and what he did, he answered, "I am the person who intends to live, and I am trying to do it now." His days were divided between watching the white wake spinning behind the stern of the swiftest steamers, or the brown earth flashing past the windows of the fastest trains, and he noted in a pocketbook every minute that he had railed or screwed out of remorseless eternity. "This is better than praying for long life," quoth John Hay, as he turned his face eastward for his 20th trip. The years had done more for him than he dared to hope. By the extension of the Brahmaputra Valley line to meet the newly developed China Midland, the Calais railway ticket held good via Karachi and Calcutta to Hong Kong. The round trip could be managed in a fraction over 4 to 7 days. And filled with fatal exultation, John Hay told the secret of his longevity to his only friend. Housekeeper of his rooms in London, he spoke and passed, but the woman was one of resource, and immediately took counsel with the lawyers who had first informed John Hay of his golden legacy. Very many sovereigns still remained, and another Hay longed to spend them on things more sensible than railway tickets and steamer accommodation. The chase was long, for when a man is journeying literally for the dear life, he does not tarry upon the road round the world. Hay swept anew and overtook the wearied doctor who had been sent out to look for him in Madras. It was there that he found the reward of his toil and the assurance of a blessed immortality. In half an hour, the doctor watching always the parched lips, the shaking hands, and the eye that turned eternally to the east, won John Hay to rest in a little house close to the Madras surf. All that Hay need do was to hang by ropes from the roof of the room and let the round earth swing free beneath him. This was better than steamer or train, for he gained a day in a day, and was thus the equal of the undying sun. The other Hay would pay his expenses throughout eternity. It is true that we cannot yet take tickets from Calais to Hong Kong, though that will come about in 15 years. But men say that if you wander along the southern coast of India, you shall find in a neatly whitewashed little bungalow, sitting in a chair swung from the roof, over a sheet of thin steel, which he knows so well destroys the attraction of the earth, an old and worn man, who forever faces the rising sun, a stopwatch in his hand, racing against eternity. He cannot drink, he does not smoke, and his living expenses amount to perhaps 25 rupees a month. But he is John Hay the immortal. Without he hears the thunder of the wheeling world, with which he is careful to explain he has no connection whatever. But if you say that it is only the noise of the surf, he will cry bitterly, for the shadow on his brain is passing away as the brain ceases to work, and he doubts sometimes whether the doctor spoke the truth. Why does not the sun always remain over my head? Asks John Hay.